Yeah. Is it Wednesday already? Oh boy. Hang on a sec. So 2 weeks ago, I mentioned that I recently watched all of the episodes of Star Trek the Original Series. And I really hate to admit that because it's the first time that I can honestly claim that I've seen all the episodes of Star Trek the Original Series. Yes, I know, I should turn in my geek credentials right now. As I was watching, I noticed something rather interesting. When the crew of the Enterprise encountered a highly advanced civilization, one that was more advanced than they were, more enlightened, more peaceful, and more highly evolved in their intellect and morality and consciousness. For example, in the episode where Captain Kirk has to fight the Gorn and blows him up with a bamboo cannon. At the end of the episode, a Metron, the aliens that were responsible for stranding Kirk on the planet, shows up and reveals that they are highly refined and intelligent and that they were worried that contact with humanity would sully them in some way, shape, or form. We see this, for example, with the Organians, who impose a peace treaty on the Federation and the Klingons to keep them from killing each other. Again, they've evolved past the point of conflict and bloodshed and all that sort of a thing, and now they're imposing that on these lesser beings. Taken all together, it seems as though Gene Roddenberry has this idea that species sort of go on a straight line linear evolutionary course, not just in terms of biology, but also in terms of morality. That as we progress as a species, we will just naturally become more and more peaceful, more and more intelligent, more and more moral. It's a very humanistic view of humanity. And we see this even in the next generation, where the evolution has continued. And yes, it's true that the Enterprise D does encounter some very hostile life forms. The most obvious example, which would be Q.
I sincerely hope that this is the last time that I find myself here.
You just don't get it, do you, Jean-Luc? The trial never ends. We wanted to see if you had the ability to expand your mind and your horizons. And for one brief moment, you did.
When I realized the paradox.
Exactly. For that one fraction of a second, you were open to options you had never considered. That is the exploration that awaits you. Not mapping stars and studying nebula, but charting the unknown possibilities of existence.
Q, what is it that you're trying to tell me?
You'll find out. In any case, I'll be watching. And if you're very lucky, I'll drop by to say hello from time to time. See you out there.
But by and large, humanity has continued along that straight line evolutionary course. They're peaceful. I mean, Worf is the security officer, for crying out loud, a Klingon. And they are obviously progressing along that course that Gene Roddenberry has envisioned. What I find interesting is when we look at the non-Roddenberry Star Trek series, such as Deep Space Nine or Voyager, where it's after Gene Roddenberry's vision, somebody else is sitting at the helm, and what do we see but highly advanced civilizations that are hostile to humanity, who are further along on the so-called evolutionary ladder, but are jerks. I mean, there's, for example, the Dominion in Deep Space Nine, or the biggest example would be the Borg in Voyager, or Species 8472, or 87... I'm just going to turn in my geek card now. Species 8472. Here we see these species that are supposed to be more advanced than humanity, but they're little more than savages themselves. Somebody with a different view of humanity stepped in, somebody who did not agree with Gene Roddenberry's straight line evolutionary view, and said that no, humanity needs to walk a more delicate balance because there's no guarantee that we're going to better ourselves as a species in the future. Again, how we view humanity colors the way that we look at the future. And it's not just Star Trek that we see this phenomenon, where one man's vision of humanity shapes his vision for the future. I'll give you another example. Specifically the TV show Dollhouse that was created by Joss Whedon. I loved Dollhouse when it was on. I thought that it was much better than most people gave it credit for. But what I found interesting is that when my brother-in-law got me this special collector's edition of Season 1, one of the things that came with it is this little hologram thing. Ooh, isn't that video special effects? We spare no budget here. Anyway, this little hologram thing in which Joss kind of shares his vision for humanity and why the show turned out the way that he did. And the most interesting thing is a one-sentence paragraph here where he says basically, I am a monster. And at the end of this little letter thing, he writes, watch and you'll see what a dim view I take of humanity and how hard I love it. And we certainly see that in this show. If you've ever watched Dollhouse, you know what a dark and twisted vision that Joss has of human beings. How he sees us basically as morally corrupt people who can't be trusted with powerful technology because we'll just use it to corrupt ourselves and other people. And yet he still has that glimmer of hope that humanity can fix itself at some point. This is especially true if you see the two epitaphs that he wrote for Dollhouse, where he sets the entire cast in a dystopian future and, well, where humanity is struggling for its own survival. And speaking of dystopia, well, we had to go there eventually. The other day I was walking through Barnes & Noble and I went through the young adult section and I noticed how many dystopian novels there are in YA. And this seems to be a pretty common theme that started, well, let's be honest, with The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins and has gone on with other series such as, the Incarceran series. I'm about 3/4 of the way through Safik right now, or Partials, I've got that in my to-be-read pile, or Cinder, or that's over there in my already-been-read pile. All sorts of different novels are out there in which we see a bleak future for humanity, where society has become strict and authoritarian and repressive in some way, shape, or form. Again, why do people gravitate toward that? Why did the authors write it like that? Because it says something about how they view human beings. That deep, deep down, we all are repressive individuals who want to hold down each other and force our views on each other. I know that's a little bleak for a Christian blog, but there you go. And I think there's a reason why so many people resonate with that dystopian feeling. I think part of the reason why is because they fear that that's the way that we're going. And they see that as our future. They look at themselves, they look at each other, and they say, yes, I can see things turning out that way. I think the reason why it's so popular in YA is because it's a little bit of, how shall I say this, living vicariously through a hero or a heroine. I mean, think about, say, The Hunger Games. Here we have a horrible dystopian future in which young people are forced to kill each other on reality TV, essentially. And well, what do we have? We have Katniss Everdeen, the heroic young lady who stands up and changes that repressive society. Sorry for the spoilers if you haven't read the book yet, but there you go. And I think that a lot of people read the book because they want to identify with Katniss. They want to see themselves as somebody who could change a broken society, maybe the same broken society that they are living in right now. But whatever the case, how they view humanity colors the way that they view their own future. Which now brings us to a question. I'm not talking about Christian dystopias exactly, although I know that there are some Christian dystopian works out there. Again, over in that bookshelf, I've got Broken Angel and a few other dystopian futuristic books. How should a Christian worldview color the way we see the future? We have a certain way that we look at humanity and what we are capable of. How should that color the way that we as Christians view the future? Now, that's not something that I'm going to tackle in this video in particular. This was more of an introductory sort of thing. Instead, I'll be talking about that starting in 2 weeks. And in 2 weeks, you're going to see me probably shove my foot into my mouth. So that should be fun. But in the meantime, what I want you to do is just share in the comments. What kind of a future do you think we should find in Christian speculative fiction? And what should guide our thought processes? And I will see you in 2 weeks.